Trump has made a slew of statements about what he will be doing on day one, and let me tell you, it can't come soon enough. We're going to go over all of this today. All right, this is a quote from the Daily Wire. I've been told that it's going to be shock and awe as far as executive orders and all the list, the things that are going to happen on January 20th, and that they're going to throw a lot in the first day and maybe a couple of days that will have to be digested. This was Fox News host Bret Baier that he said earlier this month. And this was from an article published on January 10th. On Wednesday night, Trump and his top advisors met with Republican senators and discussed plans for 100 executive orders, Axios reported Thursday. Let's go. I am so ready for this. People often point out, especially, and when I say people, I mean mostly progressive Christians, that Trump can't save you. That's one of their favorite mantras to say to people like us that are excited for the return to sanity in our country and for Christian values to be back in our policies. As Josh Howerton likes to say when he responds to this question is, from what? From what? We're not saying Trump can save you eternally. Of course not. Nobody is saying that. The vast majority of us have a level head, and we are not saying that Trump can salvifically save you. So, of course not. But can he save our country from continuing down a path of certain destruction and degeneracy? Yes, he can. And he's about to do it. And praise God for that, at least for the next 4 years. But I hope that this is more of a long-term turnaround that we are facing in this nation, and that I hope that what it will do is lead people back to Christian values and ultimately the gospel and salvation. That is our ultimate hope. All right, first one, immigration. This is a quote from Donald J. Trump himself. Suspend refugee admissions, stop the resettlement, and keep the terrorists the heck out of our country. And I changed that up a little bit. This is just a return to common sense. I know all of the progressive left is going to make a huge fuss about this and saying that we are being hateful and we're being bigoted, and the Bible tells us to love our immigrants. And I can't get into all of that today. I've covered the border. I've talked to Bill Federer about this, but we're not a sovereign nation if we don't have borders. Our leaders have the right and the responsibility to protect our citizens first. And that doesn't mean never protecting other nations or stepping in to help other nations. But yes, we should protect ours first, just like we do with our own children. I would be a negligent mother if I did not care for my own children, but I was out caring for other people's children. That would mean that they would get taken out of my custody. So, of course, that also applies to something as large as a nation. The command to our leaders and to a government is one of the shortest. It's to protect the innocent and punish the guilty. So you can see those other episodes. One of my favorite thing Bill Federer says that I think puts it into a really good perspective is he says, if you ate everything that you were supposed to eat in an entire year in one day, you would die. And it's the same for a nation. We can only take in as many immigrants as can assimilate, which I know you're not supposed to say that. You're not supposed to ask them to assimilate because then you're a nationalist or you're for colonialism. Okay, but that's ridiculous because we know as Christians that the biblical worldview is the only good worldview. It's the only thing that's going to lead for the good of our nation and for the good of our neighbors. But the left would have you think, no, you can't do that. No, you can't say that. So sure, let's let terrorists into our nation. Let's let convicted rapists come into our country. Sounds great. We can't ask them to assimilate. And that's just nonsense. And that apparently that's my favorite word this week. But it's nonsense, especially in a biblical worldview. We've been taught based on the forcing of politically correct talking points that we should be overly accepting of other world religions, which ultimately cannot lead to goodness or to truth. So we know that what's best for everyone is the gospel. And so that doesn't mean that we have a theocracy where we force our religion on people. But yes, we should have biblical worldviews in our policies to protect people and to produce the best for our nation. God does not say you know what, sit back and just let everyone live how they want to live. That's actually not what he says. He says, go and make disciples. And then when Jesus tells us to pray, he says to pray for God's will on earth as it is in heaven. He doesn't say just sit back and let it be, just live and let live. He says, no, go therefore and advocate for me. Go therefore, share the gospel, share the truth in love. And so that's what we should be doing. We shouldn't just check out and say, well, that's their religion, that's their way. Again, that doesn't mean that we're forceful or that we're violent about it or that we have a theocracy, but we do have the right as a nation to say, this is how we expect you to live when you live in the United States of America. That's the whole point of the law. And you cannot have legislation without morality. All of it is telling you what you can do, what you can't do. So illegal immigration is not good for anyone. And we still have to have a cap even on legal immigration. All right, number 2, trans identifying military members and taxpayer funded abortion for military members. This is an infringement on freedom of religion. You are forcing people in this nation that have Christian values, that have a biblical worldview, to participate in things that directly contradict their belief system and their freedom of religion. I remember being in the military and hearing about this when it first came up that, oh, are we going to start not only accepting trans identifying people in the military, but actually paying for their procedures, which is insane. That makes no sense. This is an institution that is meant to protect our nation, that's supposed to be focused on winning wars and national security, and we're paying for a sex change operation. It's bad enough that Kamala was bragging about illegal immigrants that are inmates receiving taxpayer funded sex changes, but our military, this is not the kind of people that you want on the front line. I'm sorry. We used to understand that this was a mental disorder, which I believe now it's more of just a social contagion, but at the root of it is depravity. It's disorder. This is not the kind of person that you want out there defending your freedom, defending your nation. This is a quote from Trump about the military. The Biden administration promoted radical gender ideology and frivolously spent your hard-earned money on sex change operations and abortions paid by your tax dollars for military members and criminals against your will and maybe even against your knowledge. Maybe this is the first time you're hearing this today. But here's what Trump says. There's woke at the top. You need people that want to win. They want to win wars. That's what their purpose is, to win wars, not to be woke. If you want to have a sex change or a social justice seminar, then you can do it somewhere else. But you're not going to do it in the Army, Navy, Coast Guard, Air Force, Space Force, or the United States Marines. Yes, yes, this is common sense. This is not the place for that. Not to mention the causes that it can have logistically in something like a war zone. And the bottom line is, I will remind you again, you cannot change your sex. It was given to you by God. He created you either male or female. That is a good thing. And anyone telling you otherwise and convincing you to chop off body parts doesn't care about you. All right, number 4, banning men from women's sports. We will look back on this as a nation, and I think it will be one of the biggest blights on our history as a country, and wonder how on earth did we ever let this happen? We've got children, girls, young preteen, teenage girls being forced into locker rooms with boys that identify as girls, or we've got men in women's bathrooms and private spaces. So yes, absolutely cannot wait for this. And later this week, we will cover a federal court that struck down Biden's woke and ridiculous rewriting of Title IX. Number 5, energy and the economy. Drill, baby, drill. Listen, there are so many realities of alternative energies that people don't talk about. So say what you will, make your argument about drilling. But there are also repercussions and waste that comes from alternative forms of energy. Donald Trump also talked about the windmills and how ugly they are on Joe Rogan's podcast, and I would agree. And also, they create tons of waste. And then even the batteries for these electric cars, they're not telling you the full story. They're not giving you all the information. And then it's also not good to be dependent on other countries that hate us for oil. And you realize that if we are still getting the oil from somewhere else, you just don't want us to drill here. The earth is still being drilled somewhere else. So that seems like a bit of a double standard. You're okay with it happening and destroying another nation, as you would think that it does, that it destroys it, but not here. That seems like a bit of a double standard to me. All of these unelected agencies that are governing and over restricting to a burdensome level our economy with their green initiatives. Goodbye. Goodbye. It drives up the cost of goods and hinders smaller companies from even getting their foot in the door. Number 6, pardons for January 6 defendants. This is a quote from Donald Trump. Most likely, I'll do it very quickly, he said in December interview with NBC News. I'm looking first day. Some of these people have been treated so unfairly. They are absolutely horror stories, the way that they've been treated. It is absolutely criminal. They say no one is above the law except them. They're taking these punishments should fit the crime, and they do not do that in these cases for most of them. Not to mention all of the suspicious activity that day where we had videos of police holding open the door, and we've got Nancy Pelosi admitting that she declined to have extra security that day. So there's a whole lot of suspicion surrounding that day, even though the left likes to call it the deadliest day in history, which is totally ridiculous. And honestly, I don't want to hear it after Biden pardoned his son and commuted a bunch of sentences of prisoners sitting on death row. So I am just tired of having an administration that calls evil good and good evil, and I'm ready to move on. Last but not least, ending DEI. All right, it says Trump may also issue a day one executive order banning diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and personnel within the federal government, according to Axios, which fulfills his campaign promise to root out all Marxist diversity, equity, and inclusion bureaucrats. Because again, remember, this is not about equal opportunity. This is about forcing equal outcomes, which has Marxist roots. And I'm so thankful that he sees that and has been shown that, and he's being clear about that, and he's ready to get rid of it. Let's go. Come on, January 20th. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe and check the little notification bell and check out our merch at thereconcileco.com. You all have a blessed week.